Hello and welcome back to ScottyFullStack.com. I'm Scotty, and today we're going to be talking about a blog post that I put on the site about a month ago called AWS, Terraform, Nginx, Ansible, Docker, and Jenkins. This post is actually from a request from our Slack channel in the community. You can sign up for that on the ScottyFullStack.com homepage. There's a link to join the Slack community. Love to have you there. Join in. But one of our members sent me a sort of a take-home review of the interview and what they wanted to discuss. So came up with this tutorial, and I think it's a really good one to share with everyone. I thought it was just a well-rounded tutorial, and it also covers a lot and reinforces a lot of what we've been doing the past couple of tutorials on this channel. So we're going to follow up with that, and we're going to just get through this particular set of skills while repeating some of what we've already accomplished. So what will set this tutorial apart from, I think, the rest is really the Nginx portion and the Jenkins portion. What we're going to do with Jenkins this time is create a pipeline script that is in a Jenkins file that we can actually just run right from our Jenkins instance. It'll pull it down from GitHub every single time, and it will run through the steps and the stages and report back on each stage and where we're at. So definitely stay tuned for that. I think that's a really great piece to this puzzle. And so with that said, make sure you like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content. And if you're learning something new, make sure you share it with your friends. I think that we've already seen a lot of impact in the Scotty Full Stack community of people getting job offers, people going through interview processes, feeling a little more confident. And so people have been sharing that with me as we've gone along. And I think that it's just a really great community to be a part of. I think that we're starting to build something where we can rely on each other and help each other out. So like, subscribe, join Slack, just talk to me, even if you don't, really, if you're not even new. We could use some more experienced members in there helping where needed. So yeah, I think it's just a really cool thing. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump right in. So here in bold is on the tutorial is the automated provisioning and configuration of an Nginx server in Docker with SSL certificate in AWS cloud using Jenkins, Ansible, and Terraform. Exactly what the title of this post is. So they give us some assumptions. Linux, Nginx is the most recent version. T2 micro must create in their AWS account. The SSL certificate is self-signed, meaning we're not going to have to use like AWS Cert Manager or anything like that. And then the security group is default. We're going to add an extra security group just because it makes sense to, and they'll be impressed. And then the acceptance criteria for this particular task is no provisioning errors, sequence of provisioning steps in, showing that in our Jenkins up and running instance of Nginx. At the end of it, it's going to be on ADM 443. So we're going to have HTTP and HTTPS. And then the active instance configuration file, which I am assuming that what that means in this context is like Ansible, and we can actually see the step-by-step what's happening. So with that, then we're going to run the automated pipeline 3 times in a row and receive the same result. Yeah, we can delete it in between. So they say that automation is optional for removal. We're going to impress with having automated removal. And so that's that. The assumptions that I have for you for completing this tutorial is that you have AWS accounts set up. You understand IAM profiles. You have one on your local machine. That you have Jenkins installed and understand how to use it. We cover this in several other tutorials previous to this. You have GitHub. I'm using the CLI, so if you want to follow along exactly, you need the CLI. And then you have SSH keys set up between your machine and GitHub, and you also understand SSH keys set up between Jenkins and GitHub. That I do in other tutorials as well. One of them is linked below in the description. You have Terraform installed, Docker installed, you have a basic understanding of EC2 and security groups, and you have key pairs available and already created. I'm going to be using one in mine called DevOps.pem, so I expect you follow along with that, just renaming yours whatever you want, or DevOps.pem. At the end of the project, we're going to look something like this in our directory. This is on the blog. You can go over there and reference that at any time if you feel a little confused about my pace or anything like that. Sometimes watching the video can be a little quick, so I like to always do a blog tutorial as well with pretty much my exact steps. So definitely check that out. I think that'll be helpful to you. So that's it for my introduction. What we're going to be doing now is moving on to the GitHub repository creation. And I'm going to throw it out there again. Like and subscribe. I get a lot of views. I don't get a lot of likes or subscribes. So just hit the button. It's quick. It makes me feel good. And it also helps spread tutorials to people who need to learn it. So yeah, that was a cheap attempt. Anyways, moving on, we're going to start with the GitHub repository creation, and I'm going to do that in the GitHub CLI. Okay, so I'm over in a terminal in my project directory, and I'm going to go ahead and set up my repository with the GitHub CLI. So I'm going to do a gh repo create. I'm going to do my organization, and then my repository name is going to be Nginx, Jenkins, Ansible, and Terraform. Let's create that. Make it public. Yes, I want it here. Yes, I want it here. Okay, and if I go in there, I have a folder created now. If I do an lsal, I can see that I have my .git folder there. So the next step, and I do this, I think I've done this in the past too, is I want to automatically pull the GitHub standard Terraform git ignore template. So the git ignore. So if you haven't worked with Terraform before, when you try to push Terraform files up to GitHub, they're too big. They're bulky. They end up actually causing GitHub to fail when you do that push. So what we want to do is I'm going to use the raw URL, and I do this in another tutorial, and I'm going to show you the Nginx configuration one coming up. So I'm not going to go to the URL. I'm just going to tell you what to do. So wget -O. I'm going to name this file .gitignore, right? And then the raw URL, it's on the site, but it's pretty easy to find if you Google it, terraform.gitignore, just using the raw URL of that. And I'm just going to hit enter here. And so now if I do an ls-al, I can see my .gitignore file. I'm going to cat it just to show you. And there it is. So we have our all of our bulky Terraform files left out of our Git adds and Git commits. So that's actually it for the GitHub piece. We're actually set up and ready to go. If you were to navigate back over to GitHub, you refresh, you'll see that there. So there we go. So it's ready to go. So let's go ahead and start with the Nginx piece, the OpenSSL, and the static site all into Docker. All right, so the first step here is we're going to create our Nginx directory. So I'm going to make dir Nginx. And what I want to do inside of Nginx is I'm going to really do a couple of things here. I'm going to do a touch of a Docker file. I want to create that. So our Docker file's there. And then I want to make a directory called static site. And this is going to kind of be like the theme of the entire project. I'm going to have a static site folder. So what you're going to see in a professional environment, typically, whether it's a big company or a small company, and whatever project you're working on, you're probably going to have it broken down by project or product. And in this case, it's a static site. So I'm going to keep static site for my Nginx, Terraform, and Ansible directories. That's going to be the common theme. So I'm going to go into there, and then from here I want to touch a index.html file and an index.css file. I'm going to leave the nginx.conf off for now because we're just going to download that template. So now we have those files in there, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of start this fresh here and just open up the entire project as is right now. So I'm opening it up in VS Code. If you don't have it, you can open it in any one you want. I use the shorthand code, the command line utility to open this up. So it makes it pretty easy for me. So from in here, what I'm going to do now is go back into static site, and I'm going to open up those two files that I just created, the index HTML and index.css. This tutorial is not intended to be an HTML or a CSS tutorial. I am going to copy and paste these files into there. Oops, that's the CSS. And you can change these however you want. You have the freedom and ability to do that. Mine does say, hi, I'm Scotty in it. You're going to want to change that, obviously, if you're using this for any other reason. Don't say your name's Scotty if your name's not Scotty. So change these however you want. You can add whatever you want. I've linked the CSS file here. It's assuming it's in the same directory as this file. Pretty straightforward, but this is not a styling UI, because I'm like not really, if you've seen my site, like I designed that's Django site. It's not WordPress or anything. Like I'm not fantastic here. I just kind of do the bare minimum. So there's that body and .main, and that's that. So those are just some styles I have, and you'll see what that looks like here momentarily. So after we've copied those files, what we want to do is we want to get the nginx.conf file in here. And what I've done for you is linked that on the site. So if I come back here, you can find the basic configuration of Nginx here, or you can Google it, which is very useful, and get the raw URL of the basic nginx.conf file. So this is the official one. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's do another wget -o, and I'm going to name this one nginx.conf and paste my URL. There it is. And it's downloaded. So if I were to like open that, there it is. Okay, so we have a standard nginx.conf file. Here is what I really care about. Server listen on port 80. We're going to open up that index.html as our root directory. And then we have error handling, which I'm not going to concern myself with in this particular tutorial. That would really, I probably never will, because that's like a more of a kind of developer-esque role. But with that, what I want to do is I do absolutely want to add another server for 443. So I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to, right below my last server, I'm going to add another one. So server, and then here I want to like listen on 443. And here I'm just going to do HTTP2. This is the standard documentation for this. So that's why I'm doing it this way. And then listen. And let's do our same thing here, HTTP2 SSL. Again, this is in their standard documentation, so it's not necessarily even my creativity here. This is just all standard config. So server name, localhost, and then here what I want to do is add the SSL certificate. Now, this SSL certificate is referencing where our cert's going to be found. So this URL is, again, a standard URL. We're going to have to create this in our Docker image. I'm going to show you that next. So just bear with me. Keep that in mind. This certificate is going to exist in a directory that we are going to create. So SSL certificate is, I'm going to put it in, again, the standard etc nginx certs. And then I'm going to name this nginx-self-signed and then .cert. Okay, so that's my cert file. The next piece is the key for that cert file. And I'm going to do that in etc nginx private and then nginx-self-signed.key. Okay. That is it for that piece. And then what we can do is just copy actually the next piece, which is the location is going to be right below it. So with that, I'm going to paste location, bring this back. So that's going to be, again, for SSL and 443, it's going to be landing on the index.html page. And then finally, you can also add in your error handling if you want, which, again, we're not using, but it's pretty standard. So we're going to put it there. And that's actually it for our server piece. So we can save that. And what we want to do next is, of course, our Docker file. So let's just go one level up and then open that Docker file. And here we go. So inside of this Docker file, we want to start from the standard Nginx Docker image. So that's the Nginx managed Docker image. It's official, so you can trust it. And I want to run a make dir. And what we want to do is just create those directories that we just referenced in our Nginx configuration, so we can put those files there. So I'm going to create etc Nginx private and etc Nginx certs. Okay, so those two directories are going to be created. If you don't know that syntax, you can make multiple directories just by doing a space in between. And then what we want to do under that is a copy. And here we want to do our static site and then index wildcard, because we're just going to copy the HTML and the CSS, and we're going to put that inside of etc HTML, which is already, etc Nginx HTML, which is already existing in that Nginx image. And then I want to copy static and then site again. And here I want to do nginx.conf. I'm going to copy that to etc Nginx, which is again standard, and that's fine right there. Okay, so we're just going to paste it right into there. And now the last piece to our Docker creation is going to be the OpenSSL cert creation. So this is just going to be a self-signed cert. We're going to get a warning when we try to access 443 saying it's not secure, but we are going to have our information included in that cert, and then you can kind of do whatever you want with it. It's not really something you'd use in a professional setting other than possibly like internal work, but let's just go ahead and do a run. And this is, again, nothing creative from me. This is just straight from the OpenSSL documentation, but we're going to do a rec x509, which is the self-signed cert kind of code there, nodes, and then we're going to do days. I'm going to expire this in 365 days. And then the subject is a series of prompts that they ask us. So if you were to do OpenSSL in your command line, which, by the way, that's included in the Linux AMI we're using, but if you had OpenSSL on your machine and you were to run OpenSSL, just like we're doing this, you're going to get prompted for the following information. So the country, for me, I would enter US. That's my country code, right? You would be different depending on where you are. My state, again, since US was my first option, state is my second. So that's going to be Florida because I'm there. Dash organization is, in my case, my parent organization, Parlor Design, LLC, right? That's like the company you would be associated with, something along those lines. Escape it. And then we're going to do the CN is going to be my site name. So scottyfullstack.com. Okay, and that's it for that information. That's like that's a bare minimum required information that I'm going to need here. And then I want to do a new key, and then this new key is going to be RSA 2048. And then the key out is going to be, you guessed it, the private Nginx. So etc Nginx private, and then the Nginx self-signed key. Okay, so that's our key out. So our key is going to be placed in the directory we just created right above it. And then the next step here is it's going to be out, and we're going to out that cert to etc Nginx certs Nginx self-signed.cert. And that's it. We're done. So that's our Docker file. We're going to go ahead and create that so we can go ahead and come back down to our command line. Assuming you're in the directory where Docker is, we can do a Docker build from this directory, -tag it, and I'm calling mine my Docker repo or my Docker organization username is Scotty Fullstack, and then the repository in Docker I want to create here is nginx-static. So I'm going to go ahead and build the image under that tag. And I've built this one before because obviously I do dry run throughs here. So it was pretty quick for me and maybe quick for you. Oh, so I actually have a little message here. I need to just add a slash. I forgot to do that. So on HTML. So let's do that again. So let's build. And there we go. So, okay, it's taking a little bit longer now. So now I just generated my, you can see here. So it copied everything fine. And then it generated my RSA private key and it wrote it to that directory. So cool. So we've done that. If you want to have just a quick test, we can just do a Docker run. And we're just going to bind this locally to 8080 and 443 and then nginx-static. And so we can like test it. You can also at this time push this up to your Docker as well. So I'm just going to go back over here, localhost, just regular. So there we go. So that's my localhost at HTTP. If I do HTTPS, right, it's going to give me a warning. Connection's not private. I can proceed anyway. It's unsafe. That's my warning. If I check on my certificate, you can see my information. So my certificate is like at least being read here. It's self-signed. It's going to give us a warning. This is the requirement that they've asked for and are okay with in acceptance. They make that assumption. So here we have 443. Our certificate is here and it's whatever. It works and we are good to go. So there we go. That's our static site. So go ahead and push this up to Docker with a Docker push and then your tag name. And we're going to go ahead and get started on the Terraform piece next. All right, so let's go ahead and start in the Terraform piece. Before we jump right into Terraform, there's something that you should definitely make sure you have is our security group. We're going to create that first. So I already have one called DevOps Web. I've used it for a little bit now. And so that allows all SSH and TCP. I'm going to disclaim this again. I always do in all my videos. I open up everything for these tutorials. If you're in a professional setting, an interview, whatever, you're probably going to want to lock down those firewall rules. It's a little bit better, either with a VPC. So all VPC connectivity can communicate, or you're going to want to do just your machine or, you name it, or a VPN IP, anything like that. But for the purpose of this tutorial and the purpose of understanding, and even the purpose of, like, in this case, in this particular interview, I think it'd be totally fine to do this because you're going to be destroying it immediately. As long as you know to explain and as long as you understand that this isn't the secure way of doing this. So I have my default VPC security group that just comes with the AWS account. And then I also have created, which you can create security group in the EC2 dashboard, this DevOps_web. And this has all TCP open to everything, all ports, and SSH 22 obviously open to everything. So I would do something similar for this tutorial, but the key here is that we're going to need the security group ID for our Terraform. So there's that. We're going to start with that. And then now let's go ahead and move on to setting up our Terraform project. So inside Nginx is our again, base project. We're going to do a make dir of Terraform and then go into Terraform, make dir of static site, which is the theme and product here of our project. Don't start Groovy coming up. Static site, not CD, that's why. Static site. Okay, so go inside there, and then let's go ahead and create a, in my case, I can code it. So code main.tf and variables.tf. I don't need a Terraform TFRs yet. Okay, so inside of main.tf, you can always add a Terraform version if you feel like it, but I'm just going to do provider AWS. And then what I want to do is have my two variables that I'm going to define here. It's going to be region. It's going to be var.region. Then I want to have a profile, which we'll add in our description, of course. But profile here is our AWS IAM user that's in our .aws, like so, our hidden AWS folder credentials file. Again, I'll show you that. So let's jump down here. We're going to do a resource and this is going to be an AWS instance, which is going to be our EC2. And I'm just going to call this site here for Terraform. And then the AMI, I normally just grab this. You can do this a couple different ways. Gruntworks has some pretty cool ways of grabbing it and hacky ways of doing it. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to actually just come back to my dashboard. It's pretty standard, easy way of doing this. Launch instance. And then I'm going to do free tier and I'm grabbing the Ubuntu. You can do whatever you want. But this tutorial is based on this AMI. So I'm going to grab the AMI ID, paste it there in quotes, and move on. Instance type is going to be T2 micro. The key name is, again, like I said, it's a prereq. You should already have a key pair set up. If you don't, this is going to not work for you. So make sure you figure out how to set that up. I do this in pretty much every other one of my tutorials. You can check any one of them and search for the key pair, or any other blog. It's there as well, I think. So check them out. VPC security group IDs. So again, this is what I was talking about just before the step. We want to come back here to security groups. I'm going to grab the default ID for my VPC just because makes sense most of the time. And here I'm going to do my DevOps web ID, and that's going to go there. Okay, so we have those two comma separated in quotes, and then I want to do my tags are going to be name, capital N. It's going to be a var.name. And then I'm going to do that lowercase. Then I'm going to have a group equals var.group. Now this var.group, and that's it for this file. So before I go in explaining things and get carried away, that's it for this file. We're going to move on to variables.tf. That group variable is going to be the Ansible group, which I'll explain a little more in just a bit. So variable, we're going to do variable, and this is going to be profile. We're going to do region first because that's what we did first. Region description equals default free tier region. Okay. And then the variable profile. It's going to be my description default AWS AMI profile cred, something like that. Whatever you want. Don't care because it's just your descriptions for you. Name is going to be the name of the instance. So it's like a friendly name. And then variable finally is going to be group. And this is very specific here. Description. Don't know what's going on here. There we go. And this is just going to be the name of the Ansible dynamic inventory group. Okay, and that's it for our variables being defined, and that's it actually for our Terraform piece. Again, we dig into Terraform a little bit more in different tutorials, and we're going to continue to do that as we go on this channel. But that's it. It's pretty simple, just a quick EC2 with the variables. Next up is the Ansible and dynamic inventory piece. So get ready for that. All right, so for the Ansible and dynamic inventory piece, I have linked in the blog and the description of this video the DevOps button click environment build tutorial. In that, I cover this in much more detail. So I'm going to breeze through a lot of this. And we also use the same Ansible playbook for the most part as we did in DevOps 01, my very first video, my very first tutorial ever. The reason being is it's really just setting up Docker and running it. So in this case, what we want to do first is copy over our AWS credentials and our key pair from our user to our Jenkins user, because we're going to be using a local Jenkins setup with a local Jenkins user, and we want to make sure that that Jenkins user has permission to reference our AWS credentials and DevOps key pair. So let's go ahead and do that. the button click environment build, if you haven't done that one yet and you're doing this one, it might make sense for you to try that one first. So that you could stop here and you could try it, or you can continue on in this video and just make sure you're referencing back and forth what's going on, because I'm going to breeze through this part again pretty quickly. I want to get to that Jenkins pipeline build so you can get that experience. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to copy and paste this. This is just pseudo copying the AWS creds and the SSH pair and then choning them so that the Jenkins user has access to those files. So it says that Jenkins is the owner. So in here, I'm going to go ahead and paste it just like it is. I'm going to put in my sudo credentials. And there it is. So if I felt like it, I could just do ls-al/var lib Jenkins, and I can do SSH, which if I do sudo, so there I have devops.pem, right? And I can also do that for the AWS and see that there's the credentials file, and that has Jenkins. So that credentials file, again, that's a assumption prerequisite for this, as well as the key pair. Okay, so we're good there. Jenkins now has access to AWS, and it also has access to our key pair to interact with the EC2s. So the next thing that we want to do here is make sure that we have our Ansible configurations up and running. So again, typically with Ansible, if you're doing static Ansible inventories, you're going to have your hosts file in Ansible. What we want is a configuration that tells Ansible to dynamically look for EC2 instances that have been grouped by a specific group tag. So what we want to do is I can go ahead and I'll just start a new side here. So I want to go to etc Ansible. Whoops. Blah. Okay, so let's just start here. So what I have is I have a lot set up from previously working with this in the DevOps button click, but what I want to do is just go ahead and open, just so you can see, the etc Ansible AWS ec2.yaml file. This file is what's telling our dynamic inventory what to do, essentially. And this is not creative from me at all. This is from Ansible's documentation. So I'm not going to go line for line here in typing, but I will explain it. The plugin is the AWS EC2 plugin. The Bodo profile is that's a Python library, but that is referencing my AWS credentials file, and it's designating what cred to use. So for me, it's Scotty Full Stack. That's my credential. Regions is US East 1. Strict is false. Keyed groups are prefix with a prefix tag. And then my compose is Ansible host. I'm taking the IP address from all of those. So let me show you that tags next and what that means for us. So has the prefix of tags. The key is tags, right? So I'm going to go, if you don't have it already, you need to create a folder in here called groups_vars. Again, this is in DevOps button click. So check that out if you're confused. But I'm going to go ahead and make dir group bars, which I already have it. So you could do that. And then cd into group bars. And what you want to add here, I have some other files in here. Don't pay attention to them. I'm going to create a file called tag group web YAML. So I'm going to open that up. So tag group web YAML. So in here, it's pretty straightforward. All I'm adding here is just saying the Ansible private key file is that Jenkins.ssh devops.pem, and then the Ubuntu is the user, which if you've been playing around with AWS and Ubuntu at all, Ubuntu is the standard user that the AWS AMI creates for you to SSH with. So Ubuntu is the user, and the DevOps PEM is there for us, that key. And so we can move forward with this. This is all this is saying is hey, whenever we run our AWS inventory, I want to use these particular parameters to access specific hosts. So that's that. Don't need to save it because I didn't change it. So I know we have strict false on our AWS YAML file. But what I do want to do is check one back here at the Ansible config file. If you don't have that added, I always just add host key checking as false. I think that helps a lot. Because what that does is it doesn't allow a prompt to say, hey, I don't recognize this. Do you want to add it to your known hosts file? We don't want to do that. We just want to automatically add it. So there's no prompt for Ansible. And that's it for the configuration steps. The next piece that we want to do is back over in our project directory. We want to go back out. I was in Terraform before. So we have Nginx, Terraform, and now we want to make our Ansible. And of course, we want to make our static site. And I want to go into static site and I want to open like site.yaml, something like that. So this is our playbook that we're going to be using to do that. What I want to do here is I'm just going to copy the first several lines here because, again, like I mentioned at the beginning here, this file is exactly what I did in my very first video, DevOps 01. And I think it just take time away from the Jenkins piece to really go through this. So I'm just going to quickly go through this. And I changed the hosts from DevOps 01, obviously. So provision web servers is the name of this job. The hosts file, the hosts that we want to reference are that tag group web that we created in the group vares, and also that group web is going to come into play because when we create Terraform, our Terraform resource, it's going to have a web as the group. So this Ansible file is going to look for all of the instances in my AWS that have a web grouped to it. So the tasks here that we have copied are install pip3, obviously Docker SDK, the Docker itself, docker.io. Then we're going to start Docker with the start Docker and then enable Docker. And then the final step that I want to type out for you, because this is just slightly new. We kind of did this before on our local, but name is run image. That's what we want to accomplish here. Watch your spacing because this is really painful. Shell. And the shell that I want to do here is just what we did before. Docker run dash. I'm going to name it hello. That's kind of new. In the background. And I want to do ports, bind it to 80 to 80. And then again, 443 to 443. And then Scotty full stack / Nginx dash static, or you could do this to obviously your Docker. I'm just doing mine because that's what I have. And then become yes. So we're going to sudo to do that in this case because it's Docker is probably not added to any groups or anything for sudo access. So yeah, let's do that. And then yeah, that's it for Ansible. It's pretty simple actually. And again, this is all just formality here. I'm just installing Docker, running it, and then we're running the image ourselves with the Ansible pipeline. So that's it. What I want to do next is set up the Jenkins pipeline. And to do that, we're going to go ahead and commit up. So let's get that going. Okay, so I'm in my, again, root project directory here. And what I'm going to do is just go ahead and do a git add everything, git commit a whole project or something of the like. And there's all of our files, git push origin master or main, whatever yours ended up being, because they're switching that. And there we go. So we pushed it up. So if I actually go back here, there's my file. Cool. Or my files. Sweet. This is my whole project. And now we get to fire up Jenkins. So let's do that. Sudo system control start Jenkins. And there we go. So your Jenkins instance might take a minute to come up, and if it does, you can pause it, and we can come back when this is ready to go. Localhost 8080, and just wait for that to load. Okay, so once you get into Jenkins, what we're going to do is we're going to, I'm going to create a Jenkins file in my directory, and I think I said at the beginning of this video, I'm going to roll some of that back here. I said that it's going to pull from GitHub every single time. It pulls our regular files every time, but the Jenkins file itself is not going to actually re-reference. The Jenkins file in my case here is arbitrary. It's not actually going to matter because the Jenkins file is going to be the pipeline script is going to be hard coded into my job. So with that said, this is really important for like CI/CD going forward. You will have a Jenkins file that it pulls every single time if you were to do CI/CD with this, but this is just like a job. So in my case, I'm going to add the file, but it actually doesn't really matter. So just in kind of like my root project area, I'm just going to do open a file called Jenkins file. Now here, this is where this is kind of new territory for Scotty Full Stack, because usually I've just used the automated kind of setup here. But what I want to do is walk you through a actual like Jenkins file script, because this is really important. So pipeline is, we're going to define a pipeline. My agent is going to be any in this case, parameters. Again, this is in Jenkins documentation as well, but just kind of putting it all together here. I'm going to have a choice parameter, and then here I'm going to do a name of action, and then my choices are going to be apply, and then under apply it's going to be new line destroy. And then the description is going to be apply or destroy instance. Okay, so pretty easy enough. And then under that parameters, what we want to have is a stages. And under stages, I'm going to this is where you define the stages for someone to see the progress of your pipeline, for instance, right? So the first stage, the first stage is going to be a checkout stage. So in checkout, what we want to do is define steps for this particular stage. So the Git branch, and this is all like Jenkins groovy syntax, master is my branch or your branch, whatever you want to do, credentials, ID, and this is one of the prereqs, right, is you need to know how to create a credential to access your GitHub. I do that in the previous tutorials as well. And what this is going to be, I named mine GitHub. That's the ID that I named my credential. So you do that. You fill in here whatever you named yours as. But I believe I did that in the DevOps button click. So go check that out if you need. URL. And so here, what I want to do is just want to grab my URL for this. So just the SSH URL, copy that, and then come back and paste it. Okay, and so there we go. So .git, and then under that, that's like one stage there. Stage, and then I want to have a new stage under stage. Too many brackets. Stage. And this one's going to be, I'm going to call this stage Terraform. And Terraform is going to have steps. Inside steps, I'm going to have a script. Now, I'm just defining script in my file because I want to have actual logic within my like Jenkins file, right? So this just allows me to do that. So I can have an if. I can make my params, which is Jenkins standard here, action equals. So if my parameters of action equals apply, what I want to do is I want to run a shell script of Terraform init, and then I want to reference the directory because I'm pulling the root of my project. So I want to reference Terraform static site. Okay. And then under that, I want to do sh Terraform apply -var. And here I want to do a of course, as you can have a TF-vars file if you wanted. I didn't want to check mine into source code. So here I have, I'm going to define my vars in my job, but you'd probably want to do this in like Vault or something else, just depending on your requirements for your company. This is, again, just a tutorial, so I'm just going to do a one-liner here. So dash name is going to be defined as hello, dash var, and then my, whoops. Man, my fingers tonight. Like I said, you guys probably hear that too much, actually. Dash var group equals web dash var region equals US dash east dash 1 dash var. And we're, if you haven't caught on, we're just defining the variables we defined in the Terraform. Profile equals Scotty full stack, because that's my profile. You would name it yours. It's in your credentials file that we copied over. And that's it, right? So we have our name, hello, group is web, which is very important. Region equals US-East 1, and profile equals Scotty full stack. Again, the group equals web is what our Ansible playbook is going to reference as a dynamic inventory. So there is that. And then what I want to do is a dash dash auto dash approve. So we have no prompts for Terraform. And then I want to reference again, whoops. How many times am I going to say that? Terraform slash static slash site. Okay. So applying and hitting and then applying with our variables, and that needs to close a single quote. Okay, and then my else is going to just be one single one, sh. So shell Terraform destroy. I'm just going to copy. Just going to copy from here down to the vars. Okay. So there's that. And then we have our closing bracket and closing bracket, closing bracket, closing bracket, all the way down to, that's that stages. I want to start it here. So the final stage here is going to be Ansible. And this stage is going to have steps. And then we're going to set a retry of count. Like, you can do whatever count you want. I'm going to do count of 5. And my reasoning here is because you'll notice if you try this on your own, you can get kind of, oh, come on. Let me start over here. Count of 5. So the problem here is that when the Terraform creates the EC2 instance and then our Ansible tries to connect to it immediately, if that EC2 instance hasn't fully initialized, you're not going to get the connection right away. So they said no errors. So we're going to kind of like play around that and have just a retry of 5. So it's not going to actually error out. It's going to say, like, if Ansible doesn't connect, it's not going to error. It's going to internally say, couldn't connect, retrying up to 5 times. And then by then I fully expect this to be like fully operational, unless like something absolutely insane happens. So I don't think that'll happen. So we're going to do the sh shell after the, once it's available to run, playbook, Ansible playbook -i for inventory. We're defining that. It's going to be in, again, etsy Ansible. And then this one was the AWS ec2.yaml. Okay. And then we want to list, reference that path. So static, and then site, and then site.yaml. So specifically that file. And that's it for our pipeline. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to just clean up some spaces here. Okay. So that's good. So that's going to get pushed up, and it's for reference for employers. They can see that you know how to write a pipeline. It's pretty cool. You understand syntax. And what we want to do now is I'm going to come back here. I think I've copied all that text. So I'm going to go back to my Jenkins instance. I'm going to say new item. I'm going to select a pipeline. I'm going to name this like Nginx or something like that. Pipeline. Okay. There we go. And so here, what we want to do, we want, let's see here. We want to go ahead and say this project is parameterized. Okay. It's gonna, you don't have to put anything there yet because it doesn't matter. I'm gonna go ahead and paste my pipeline script in there. So there's my whole pipeline script, and I'm going to simply say apply and save. If you refresh the screen after you've jumped in here, and then you hit build with parameters, that's what you want to see is a parameter sign, not just build now. So I have my parameters apply. I also have my destroy, and we can go ahead and actually run this. So let's just go ahead and do that real quick. Oops, not destroy, apply, build. Okay, so I could go click on the output if I want. I can also see here my stages fulfilling. So if you're like live on a call and you're showing this, you're walking through it. Look, our checkout just completed successfully. We're green. We can check the logs if we want. Terraform is running now. Let's go ahead and check the logs. So we're on the apply step here. And if you want to like, we can do a couple of things here. We can actually just like open this control click. I'm gonna open a new window, and you can see my instance is still creating. Okay, so my job failed, and so I would have failed the test. You may have caught what I did. So it's saying that site.yaml could not be found. I had not. I had made a static site folder on my root. I did not make it inside of Ansible. I just updated that and pushed it up. So I have site.yaml now in my Ansible static site folder. It's in GitHub. So I can actually run this again. It's going to repull. So let's do that one more time here. Let's first destroy. I'm going to destroy my resource, and we'll speed it up. Okay. So let's go ahead and apply it. Let's check our logs. Make sure our progress is moving. All right, so starting the apply now. So what I can do is actually come back to my EC2, and it's going to load my instances. So I have the one I just terminated, and then here's one that's pending. It's standing up called hello. So that's that. We can just follow along in Jenkins. So as you see here, our retry methodology worked. So we have one resource added at the top there, failed to connect, it wasn't ready. Failed to connect on the second try, it wasn't ready. On the third try, it was able to connect. So now we have our EC2 instance that's been like registered, and Ansible is now starting to do the install steps. So we'll end up taking this, and this will be our public DNS here, and we can kind of get ready to go to it here. So it's not going to show anything yet. So while that's installing, let's bump back to our stages, and you'll see here we had the checkout was successful, Terraform successful, and now Ansible is almost complete. So it's moving it's moving along, and this is something you can show live during a video. By the way, I know their requirements here said no errors. There is nothing better than somebody who can troubleshoot errors on the fly. Don't be afraid in technical interviews. Don't be afraid anywhere to ask questions. Don't be afraid to start your troubleshooting and say, hey, look, I know it failed. I'm going to figure it out right now, fix it. Like I know what the issue is, right? Don't be afraid. I mean, that's part of it. There's not a day that goes by that I don't have an error I don't see something wrong that DevOps isn't constantly trying to fix things as they go. And so this was a success. If I come back here and let's go ahead and refresh. Whoops. But yeah, just the bottom line, just don't be afraid. Okay, so here's my HTTP. This is port 80. If I go to HTTPS, so I get my warning. I'm going to go ahead and proceed. And here, so I'm on HTTPS, not secure. If I come here to my certificate, it's self-signed, invalid, but common name, there's my organization name. So I upload a certificate to Nginx, that configuration file, referenced it, and we placed it where it needed to go with our Docker file in the build process, pulled it down from the cloud, and it is running. So that's it. That's all I have for this particular tutorial. Again, this was sent to me by somebody after the fact, and they thought it was a good idea to cover, and I thought it was a good idea to share. So, hey, if you made it this far, good for you. Thank you. You're awesome. You're like one in a million. So I can pretty much say whatever I want at the end of these things, and we'll see who's following me. But yeah, hey, check out more. Thank you for bearing with me. Stay tuned for more, and like and subscribe if you made it this far. I think I've earned it. And yeah, hey, have a good day wherever you are, whoever you are. I appreciate you being here. So more to come. Thanks.